Okay, so I thought today I would do a video about why I decided to live in my car. And of course, this was not an overnight decision, so that's why I wanted to kind of get into it a little bit further. So anyone who's seen my videos before, maybe this is your first time, basically it came down to me. I was living in Arizona. I got offered a job in Washington, and of course, I didn't have anywhere to live in Washington, but I still wanted to take the job. And so in my mind, I thought, okay, well, I'll just like drive up there, I'll move all my stuff there, and that basically maybe I'll like stay in hotel rooms until I can find an apartment. I definitely considered just sleeping in my car, for like 1 or 2 nights, if I had to, but I wasn't actually planning on living in my car, which is what I ended up doing. But I want to talk a little bit more about what led to that decision, how a lot of thought process went into it. And that's why I thought I would make a video to kind of cover some other stories as well. So let me back up a while. And another thing I like to talk about on this channel is taking jobs that are temporary seasonal jobs that usually like working for a national park. Usually it's like a summertime job and they offer housing. Okay, so part of the reason that I do videos about this is because I do have experience doing that sort of thing. I've worked for a couple of places like that offered housing while I was working. And I do want to get into one of the jobs that I had. This goes a ways back, but I took a job. I was working for a national park. So it was in a very like remote area. So they of course offered housing for the people that work there. There were certain requirements to keep that job, and one of those was they would do drug testing before you could be approved to work there. And then, of course, while you continue to work, there was randomized drug testing. Now, I had prior worked as a driver, which I've talked about in some videos, and usually to be a driver, to drive a vehicle, they make you do these randomized drug tests all the time because, before they let you just go and drive the vehicles, they at least want to make sure that you're safe to drive. So I had no problem doing that. I know that I don't use anything, so there wasn't going to be any sort of issues. But there were a lot of people that one by one, slowly, people started to, one day they were there and the next day they weren't. And if you asked around, usually they'd say like they failed their randomized test and they got sent home. So when you're at a job that's basically providing you housing and you know that at a moment's notice they can basically fire you, then where are you going to live? And so, I definitely was concerned about that because I felt like there was a lot of times where they kept trying to pull me in for testing. And they say it's random, but yet I had been pulled in several times and they weren't having other people tested. And, that's when you start to get like this paranoia, like maybe they're trying to target me. Maybe they're trying to like find ways to get rid of me because they don't want to actually fire me, but they want to like find things I've done or a way to like get rid of me. And I knew like joke's on them because I'm going to pass that test because I don't use anything. So I don't have anything to worry about. But it still started to like get me wondering about what would happen if I had nowhere to live. I mean, because obviously like if they suddenly say, hey, you're fired, and then you basically are going to be like asked to leave that day, here's your whole employment and your living place is all wrapped up in one. So that I'm thinking like, great, I better have a backup plan. Now, I knew, like I said, there were certain people that did kind of like get fired. One day they're there, the next day they're not. I remember one guy, they said that he had gone in for testing and, well, this is probably gross, but they said that he had gone in for testing and basically he had blood in his urine and that he wasn't being fired or anything, but there was something wrong with him where he had to be hospitalized. And so it was kind of like, okay, well, that's pretty drastic. Now, I don't know why the powers that be, the upper management told all of us that, because I feel like that's kind of like private medical information about somebody that maybe they don't want us to know that. But also I thought maybe they're just like making that up. Maybe they don't want to like tell us the truth and say that he failed his test and he got fired. But, that's like all this was happening like almost daily where someone would just suddenly be there one day and then gone the next. And I got super paranoid. I'm not going to have anywhere to live because I didn't really like have a necessarily backup plan. I knew I was going to be working at this place for the summer, but then by summer's end, I was going to have something else worked out. But until then, if something were to happen to me and I lost my job, I really would have had nowhere to live. Now, this is where it comes to another person that I worked with at this job. I guess she just absolutely hated the job. She didn't want to work there anymore. And that's fine. That stuff like that happens. But she also I think she was 18 years old, maybe just left the house or something. And so she didn't, when she wanted to quit the job, but she didn't want to like move back home basically. And so when I was talking to her and asking like, well, what's your plans? Where are you going to go? Because if you quit this job, you're not going to have a place to live. And if you don't want to go back home, what are you planning on doing? And she said she was just going to sleep in her car. And I, of course, thought like, why? Like, sleep in your car? Like, you know, is that even safe? Like, you know, where are you even allowed to like park your car and sleep in your car? Like, you know, I had all these questions about it because I just thought like, of course, like, where are you going to go to the bathroom? Like, how are you going to take a shower? Like, I just had so many questions about it. And so I, you know, that led me, of course, you know, to kind of like look into this sort of thing. Like, what if I lost my job? What if they fire me and get rid of me? Then I'm going to have to sleep in my car. And I just thought of it as like this panic, like, no, that's actually not what I want to have happen. And that's when I had said before, I started like, you know, going on YouTube. I started looking up about finding other people that were like actually living in their car as like a lifestyle. Like, instead of paying rent on an apartment, they were choosing to live in their car. And usually these are videos where people like lived in like a full-size van. So, I mean, it's like they had a bed and everything in there. So it wasn't like they were just like cramped into a backseat of a car. But the more that I watched these videos, I thought, okay, well, like, this actually is maybe a lifestyle that someone could have, because there are places you can park. There are ways you can take showers, like getting a gym membership, you know, and I just started to look into it more. And I thought, well, maybe this is something that I should consider. Now, not at that time thinking I'm going to like quit this job and go live in my car. I was more thinking of like a backup plan. Like, if this job fires me and I'm not here all summer like I had planned to be, then I need somewhere to go. And so like constantly in my mind, I was thinking like, okay, if they fire me, that's what I'm going to do. Like, you know, you never want to get fired, but sometimes like I'm someone that always just like has a backup plan, because I get like really worried about stuff like that. And so then, like I said, I just kept watching these videos. And of course, you know, kind of like how YouTube is, the more you watch one video, then they suggest other videos to you. So then I just started doing that. I started watching lots and lots of videos, and then really just started looking into like the city or the area I was in, because obviously at that point in time, I was in like this totally remote area. And so I was trying to like scope out other cities nearby of where I could go, because I just kept thinking like, once they fire me, once they get rid of me, like, you know, like, because I don't know why I just had that in my mind. Maybe because they kept doing these like randomized tests on me. Then I thought, okay, cool. Like, I'm just going to go live in my car. Let me scope out what the best city is for me to like sleep in my car. Then I'll, you know, start applying for jobs in that city. And so I kind of had this whole plan. I mean, it wasn't a plan that I was going to actually act on, but it was like this whole plan that I was building in case like disaster happened. And disaster never actually happened, so I never actually followed that plan. But then that's why I say, you know, come years down the line, when I was living in Arizona, and then I get this really great job opportunity in Washington, and they're telling me like to come move to Washington and accept the job. And I'm thinking, okay. And right away I was thinking, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stay in a hotel, because I know sometimes they have those like extended stay motels or weekly stay motels. I thought, okay, I'm going to do that. And I started pricing those out, and the prices were absolutely ridiculous. I was like, I cannot even afford that. So then I thought, okay, now what? What am I going to do now? So, you know, back then, this is a while ago. So back then there was Airbnb. And Airbnb, I think like they would offer where you could just like sleep on someone's couch. And there wasn't like all these like deposit fees and cleaning fees and all that stuff that they have now. So you could literally find a place to like sleep on someone's couch for like $19 a night, anywhere from like $19 to $30 or something like that a night. And actually, I did end up doing some of the Airbnbs. I might stay one night here, one night there, or if someone was having a special where you could stay a whole week. So I did that. I did stay in some Airbnbs, but ultimately what ended up happening is I was like fully and officially living in my car at some point, because I could no longer afford to just be staying in fancy hotels or even cheap motels. The Airbnb, you know, some nights, like trying to schedule the Airbnb at that time, like you'd have to kind of schedule out in advance in order to get that really cheap rate. So there were times when I was like, I'm just going to sleep in my car. But then it turned into more of like, now I'm living in my car. I'm living in my car full term. Meaning like I ended up like building a bed into my car. I made it very comfortable for me. because obviously the first few times that I slept in my car, I just tried to like lay down in the back seat, and that was not comfortable at all. Like I had to actually get like a mattress and blankets and pillows and all that stuff. And then it was great and it worked out for me. But this is why when I try to answer the question of what gave me the idea or why did I end up living in my car, I mean, like I said, it definitely was not like a split decision. It was something that I put a lot of research into. I went into thinking like all the things that I would need to do to plan it out in advance. And so that's why we want to go more into detail about that in a future video, about like what the steps were and what were the things I needed to do to get everything straightened out in my life for that to work. But I just wanted to appreciate you for watching this, and I hope that I can be helpful in any way if you are looking to live in your car. So maybe you'll find yourself in the same kind of situation where, you know, maybe you get a really great job offer in some other state and you've got to move cross country and you need somewhere to stay just for a short while. That was my situation. But also, if you're ever in such a situation where things are so bad that you have to end up living in your car, then that's why I also want to give you some information on what you can do to make that transition a lot more easier for you. Thanks.